Okay everyone, how are we doing? We've reached Tuesday and things are wonderful again. We've got Scott McDonald back in the channel with that big smile. Hello Scott, how's it going?
Hello, I'm just smiling because things are good again because your hangover is not there anymore, Hamish, after an entertaining weekend, I imagine,
Yeah, it was
apart from the
brilliant.
result.
Well, the thing is, like, the game happened and it was disappointing at the time, but I think, as I said yesterday, by about 3:30, I was absolutely fine. I watched Eurovision on Saturday night. That cheered me up as well, and then Sunday was good. So it was fine in the end. So I think it is a good time to maybe just pause and take a wee look, especially after Saturday, which was obviously one of our poorer performances this season. What was your kind of verdict on Saturday, and how did you feel after it?
Yeah, look, I like everyone disappointed, as you're always going to be in these games when you lose them. It's never going to be happy moments, but you can slightly take it out of context because of the emotion of what that game means. And you've really got to think about it only being the second defeat domestically all season. And it's easy to jump on the high horse then and start saying this one's not good enough, that one's not good enough, shouldn't have done this, shouldn't have done that. It's always easy in hindsight, and we can talk about that here, and we'll critique it. And of course, I'm going to critique it. And like a lot of people have probably said that once it's done with, Andrew will probably look back and go, I shouldn't have made those changes. He more or less said that. I believed it was dangerous going into the game, making any changes. He wanted to find out a little bit about his players in that environment, the ones that haven't experienced it before. However, when you're cold and you've not played as many matches leading up to this with individuals, it's very difficult to play at your best. And in terms of them to have the connection with the rest of the group, as we've seen in terms of build-up play and interconnection and relationships on the field, it just wasn't happening. It wasn't clicking in certain parts. I think he felt we had enough in that team selected, though, that the spine was still strong. What it really resonated for me more than anything, individually, who they missed mostly was Cameron Carter-Vickers from a defensive perspective, a leadership point of view, but also from a set piece perspective as well, biggest. I lost count how many times Goldson got first contact or Rangers got first contact in Celtic's box, which this season hasn't happened. So it shows you. And look, Celtic aren't the biggest team, definitely domestically or in, European wise. They're quite a small team overall, but what Cameron Carter-Vickers gives you is how he attacks that ball, and he usually is that free man inside that 6 yard box. And I thought they desperately missed him. And in terms of his composure at the back and having two different left-sided players and playing Starfelt on the right, the balance just didn't feel right. And I thought, if we're being honest, Bernabeu was very poor, very disappointing, and I'm not quite sure where his future will lie now, personally speaking. It was just the turnovers of possession in the first half and not knowing whether to invert, to go high, to go low. Watching it on the TV, it was quite frustrating, from my perspective, watching it at times, because it was difficult for him and Iwata, any relationship that was going on there. So it could be Ashi, wasn't it? Not
Yeah.
Iwata. Yeah, sorry. In terms of, we've got a sweet left foot. The question is going to be asked now, can he physically stand up to what Scottish football is going to give him? And that's going to be the biggest question going forward now for him, and people are going to target him if he does play. But overall, it's a learning curve as well for everyone involved and himself, and how they go forward. It's not crisis though, so
Yeah.
it's one that everyone knows that, it's lovely to say in hindsight could afford to lose, but you don't really want to lose it. No one wants to lose that game. You want to make sure that, like I said last week, you want to make sure that Rangers are left with nothing, to have at the end of the season. That they've got something to, with a pinch of salt, hold on to now for next season. It will give Michael Beale a little bit of confidence in some of his players that are there for next season. They'll have a big turnaround of players as well, and I think there'll be a few more than we probably expect, at Celtic as well.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, they're a victim of their own success in a way. We look at this season, and and where we've really improved from a year ago. For me, you know, the depth in the squad has been a major factor that we didn't have last year, that Ange has clearly recruited well, and that's by design. It's something he commented on in the summer. Where, I mean, this is the hardest question I've probably ever asked, but where do you see the next stage? How does Celtic improve on a near faultless domestic season? I guess the answer is probably something to do with the Champions League.
Yeah, absolutely. They want to succeed in that. They want to try and get into the next phase of the Champions League, into the round of 16. I think this is the final year of the competition in the format that it's in as well. Um, for what I understand, I can't understand what's going to happen next in that format. I'll wait till the following year. So don't ask me. But yeah, look, I think always the aim for Celtic is to try and reach past the group stages. You need a bit of a luck of a draw, but you also need to now start winning your home games within European football, which, you know, the record for Celtic in recent years over the last decade have been very poor, you'd have to say, which for me is a huge surprise because of the 12th man that the supporters bring and how special those evenings are. But they need to bring that belief back. They need to get a result in Europe first out, you know, and that will give everyone a huge lift and a belief, not just players but fans and everyone, and it will create something of a special atmosphere and feeling going forward. So that's really important, and obviously you need a good draw sometimes. But I think even at that, then minimal, you know, if it's not qualifying for the last 16, it has to be that Celtic are still in Europe after Christmas. You know, vying for that Europa League, and it's still a, you know, great competitive competition. But albeit you just want to be in the biggest one. But I think that's probably, you know, something that Ange will aim for. But still domestically, you've got to get the job done. Everyone likes to overthink everything about the European part's the bonus. That's the enjoyment part, because all the hard work you've done all season domestically and how you have to grind and graft, go through the winter months, injuries, winter breaks. There's a lot that happens, you know, as an individual, as a player, as a coach. So as much as we say, yeah, Ange will be focusing on Europe, he's just focusing on getting the job done again domestically first and trying to build the culture again, the good habits, the confidence, and making sure that they're one step ahead of Rangers once again.
Yeah, it'll be about improvement. I think he said last week that it's not as if you choose between European progress and, you know, domestic dominance. It's they're both byproducts of improving the squad, improving the team. They will both arrive as a result of that. These videos can sometimes turn into a bit of a keep and sell video, but that is the squad there we've got at the moment. I mean, as I say, we don't want to sell anyone right here on this video, but are there areas there specifically that you think, you know, recruitment and players are needed to try and improve?
Look, you look at possibly the goalkeeping area with Joe. I'm not too sure about the other three, whether they're going to be hanging around. So there might be another one that really puts Joe on his toes. I think left back as well. If Greg Taylor gets injured, that's a concern for me. You're looking at those midfielders. Look, I think it's an interesting one from a Japanese perspective or an Asian market perspective, because for me, it's been a 50-50 in terms of success rate so far. People will say otherwise, but, you know, Maeda's been decent. You look at Hatate and Kyogo have been the standouts for me. The rest haven't done it yet. There's been no proof that actually come and stamp their authority or actually got into this Celtic side. So it's okay to keep going back to the Asian market, but the English I'd like to see a little bit more European influence, if I'm honest, within the Celtic squad. It's hard, though, because of the finances. We've got to be real about everything. But particularly, I think, in that attacking midfield area, and even in the wide areas, and another striker, I think if you're going to crack Europe, you need to bring in something that can turn something in. And look, Celtic have got quality players there that, given the chance, you've got to give them the opportunity. I was given the opportunity and turned up. So, you know, at certain moments. So you don't know until you're given that opportunity. However, I still think that, you know, relying just on O'Reilly is going to be difficult in that attacking number 10 role. I think they need to find someone else in that area. And if they can find another 9, because again, look, it's very early to say, but how is he going to deal with domestically transitioning from where he was in Korea to now playing Scottish football. Look, it's still very early days, and can he do it quickly? Because Giakoumakis is ahead of that for me, and where he was and when he left. In terms of or a replacement for Kyogo, I'm not sure that O's there yet. But with pre-season, because it's always difficult when you come in a January window, maybe we can see a difference in that once he's got the time. Because when you come halfway through a season domestically or whatever, you haven't got the opportunity then to bed into the style or go through those training sessions that Ange likes to put out, early in the pre-season. You haven't had that betting or the understanding of that. You're trying to pick it up as you go along. I mean, if you're not in that 11 all the time, it's very difficult. Like Johnson comes in and hits the ground running, but he's in there and he's consistently in there, so he gets that opportunity to learn while he's going. Whereas the other ones are like in, out, not sure. Where's my relationship with the other players? Difficult. The other thing I want to pick up on before we move on is that with being in European Football Champions League once again, Ange will have learnt a lot from his pre-season last year, because this is the first time that Celtic, correct me if I'm wrong, in a long, long time, haven't had to go through qualifications. So the pre-season was dragged out. Was it competitive enough? Was it in the right places where he wanted to go? Did he get enough out of it? Because for me, he looked a bit disgruntled in pre-season. I don't think he was particularly happy with the flow and how the team was going in that time. So it's going to be interesting to see. Obviously, they go to Japan, they go to Korea. In those moments, there'll be excellent games. It'll be interesting to see what else they've got lined up for that pre-season and how he's better prepared now going into that domestic season without competitive games, because that was a challenge I thought at the start of this season, not having that as per the usual for a lot of those players that have been there before.
He tried to replicate Champions League away matches in pre-season. We played... and to be fair, these aren't Champions League level teams. They're probably kind of Europa League, Conference League level. We played Legia away from home. We played one of the Czech teams as well. I think it was Baník Ostrava. And we played Rapid Vienna as well. And I think he said all three of them were like quite good atmospheres. And I think that was his whole thing was we need to go to these grounds, even in friendlies, and be able to kind of deal with atmospheres. So I'm intrigued. It doesn't seem like we're going that way this season. Obviously, there's still time for them to announce games, but it seems like it's a very different approach if we're going to Japan. I know we're still going to a European camp at the start, so maybe there will be some of these games. But I mean, like pre-season, because I would kind of look at pre-season as being just a thing to get your fitness up and to maybe get some relationships going, but. I mean, is that a vital period in terms of the start of the season in the Champions League?
Yeah, I think it is, and I think for a lot of the Celtic players that have been there prior, it would have been such an odd feeling last year not to have any pressure so quickly. To have 4 or 5 weeks of lulling almost, and this is great. We're traveling here. We're going there. This is good. We're having a bit of a laugh. It's not full series, full on. It is still with Ange. Don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to say it was. A piss up or a jolly.
They weren't in Dubai having a wee drink,
no,
really.
But you can't replicate the real thing. You can't. They're friendlies, and you make mistakes in them. They don't hurt you, And I guess you can learn from them. But how much do you really buy into that at times? And I've had good pre-seasons. I've had bad ones, and I can't really put my finger on whether that helps you or not, because there's been times when it's been that bad, and then. First game comes and you're winning every game. There's been other times you've won every game up until the first game, you lose the first one, and then everything goes to pot. So there's no right or wrong in it. It's just, I guess what I'm trying to say is he's going to be far more better prepared in understanding what the team needs going into this campaign more than he did last year, and on the back of seeing what his players gave him during that period.
Do we miss physicality? Do we need to add physicality? What do you think?
Look, I guess you can, as long as they're still in the same profile of how Ange wants to play his football, fast and dynamic. They have to still bring those certain attributes that he wants to bring to his team. Not just going to bring in different styles, apart from maybe up front. That obviously O was a replacement for Giakoumakis in that sort of style, wanting to have a bigger sort of centre forward who could throw his body weight around. difficult, to find, in that midfield. They're also dynamic. Where do you find that physicality? Do you go and try and buy one? Where do they fit into the team? I'm not sure they do. I just think that with your left back is unfortunately that small, your midfield's that small. I think O'Reilly gets a nod at times because he is a little bit bigger in certain games. Maeda's not exactly tiny either. Abada then brings a little bit less physicality. Also, Jota with that. Depends what game you're playing. Domestically, it's fine. Domestically, 9/10 of possession during the season. They're not going to get done too many times. However, I still think set pieces has always been the Achilles. If you're going to look at Celtic, if I'm tactically looking against Celtic, I need to make set pieces count because that's where always they seem to be hurt from. So that's where you can get at Celtic. Look, but it's not enough to actually damage or dint, Celtics, tally or losing games because of how they play the football. So it's a give and take. You look at Barcelona for so many years, how small they were, and they went zonal in their box. So it's just how you deal with things, and maybe Ange looks at it how they deal with things to try and nullify that. But I don't think he's too worried about what the opposition do a lot of the time. I think Ange focuses much more on unless it's elite level teams, what they're doing, that's fine. But I think domestically, I think it's just all about what Celtic do because, again, like I said, you have the ball 9/10 of the time, so you have to move the opposition and try and get into into those low blocks that they give you and answer the questions. But certainly, sometimes maybe in European games you might need that. I know in times gone by, successful teams, if you look at Celtic previously, whether it be Martin O'Neill, Gordon Strachan, Neil Lennon time, there was always that physical element that we knew if we got a set piece that was going to be huge for us and we needed to go and make it count. That doesn't necessarily happen now in terms of because there's a style that Celtic want to play and how they're trying to go toe to toe with the European superpowers on how they play and their styles as well.
Yeah, I mean, I do get that, and I think Ange maybe did look at a bit of physicality in January. I think Iwata could potentially be that player from what I've seen so far in terms of getting stuck in. I think Alistair Johnson, I've not seen him play in the Champions League yet, but I am certain he's going to do well in the Champions League. I just get that impression because he's strong and he's quick, and I just think he's a kind of player who will rise to the occasion in the Champions League. So, and O, I guess, as well, was another kind of physical player. But I just wonder sometimes in that kind of midfield and on the wings, and I suppose at Kyogo as well, at that top level, do we just lack that little bit of physicality? But I guess it's something Ange will be looking at. The other thing I want to mention, there was a report late last week suggesting that Ange is wanting to look at younger players this summer. Now, he gave me a great answer at the start of the year when he effectively said when he first came into the club, he felt they needed experience to get Celtic back to where they had to be. So guys like Juranovic, Giakoumakis, and maybe now it's the time to look to that kind of 20 to 24 age group. Is that something you maybe see younger players being targeted this summer, kind of greater room for improvement?
Well, the question I have to both then is, do we have to target them outside the club? In terms of domestically, the success that the B team has had, is there anything in there right now out with Vata that's had an opportunity that can step up? I'm sure if there is, then Ange isn't afraid to give them that opportunity. He never has been with young players in the past throughout his history as being a coach, whether that be in Japan or in Australia. So I don't think that's an issue for him. But again, it's going to answer a few questions if he goes down that route. Well, if you're signing that, yes, from a marketing perspective and a business perspective, you're buying to then have sell on if they do well at this football club. I think that's always been Celtic's remit anyhow. Not a selling club, but if you're successful and we can get big money for you, then we will move you on to then surplus for the next bunch of talented players that we can bring through the doors. However, with Celtic now, and in terms of what I know the B team are doing, it would be nice to see within, but very difficult to break through at Celtic. We know that. If you look at, there's been a handful throughout the last decade who have actually made it, and played week in, week out. I think Tony Ralston's probably now the most prominent, you'd have to say, arguably, that's come through in recent times. But again, it's been up and down for him. Welsh has had his opportunity. It doesn't look like that's going to really, I think he might be looking for first team football elsewhere now that you had a taste. Mikey Johnson's still questionable whether he comes back to the club. And thereafter that, you talk Cal McGregor and probably Jamesy Forrest, pretty much, that have been domestic, successful from coming through the ranks. So it would be nice to see more, but that's always easy when you're on the outside and you haven't got the job either. So time will tell.
Yeah, I think Ben Summers is one they're talking about. He won the Academy Player of the Year award, so it'd be good to see someone like him. Vata's obviously had a few opportunities, but as you say, it's so difficult because Ange is taking this team to a hell of a level, and there's so much competition as well. So it's getting an opportunity, taking your opportunity, and then getting more. So it's tricky. The final thing I wanted to just ask you, whether you think there'll be any real surprises this summer. So do you think there'll be any players that we look at right now and think, yeah, they're absolutely going to be part of things next year, and then Ange goes, no, I think I can upgrade you?
Look, Ange can do some interesting things at times. There's not any that roll off the tip of my tongue.
You got experience of that, Scott?
Not me personally, but I guess if you don't fit the remit, or in terms of from what the club needs, or you're off asking for too much money that we don't know about, or there is a huge fee involved, then we could see that happen. Again, money talks, Hamish, as we always know, and there's always a right number for a certain player. We talked about Cameron Carter-Vickers. That's the one for me that you certainly do not want to lose at this moment. I wouldn't want to lose Hatate either just yet. I think another year at least. I would want. Maybe I would want more than that. But again, if he keeps performing, it's going to be difficult to keep him. I think the ones I think David Turnbull will be looking for first team football. I think he's one that will look to leave. I don't know how much they'll get for him now because he's not played a lot domestically this season. He's a Scotland international, however. And then out with that, Abada, there's been talk of, we know, possibly potentially leaving as well. And if the money's right, again, Celtic will probably sell and look to bring in a new one as well.
Yeah. Right, okay, that's fine. We'll park that for now then. A busy summer ahead. What about the kits though we're going to be wearing next season, Scott? Ooh. People love the kits chat. First of all, what was your favourite Celtic kit from your time playing for the club?
Look, I think obviously the 40-year anniversary one, that was my first season.
Oh, yes. They had a lovely kind of thing over the crest.
Yeah, beautiful. I loved it. The 40-year anniversary, Lisbon Lions. And then obviously in my second season, the famous Bumblebee kit came back, which was amazing because I remember growing up and watching George Guidetti, Paolo Di Canio wear that. It was amazing. And then you get a similar one as well. Wasn't successful in it though. That was probably the only bad thing about it. But the new Celtic jersey, if it's right, and in terms of with the white emblem that I've seen, it looks quite smart. If that's going to be the new home kit.
So
very old
this
school.
one you're talking about?
That's exactly that one, yes. I do like that. However, it's quite interesting, different, isn't it, in terms of not having really be able to see the badge. But I like it. I think it's quite old school.
So the update on this is, and it's kind of not great news, is that is correct, but it's apparently only going to be a limited edition kit. So similar to the Scotland one, if you've seen that. So they're probably, without knowing for sure, not maybe going to wear it often.
Okay.
Which is so we also, by the way, got the third kit. This is official for next year, which I'm not sure. It's quite out there, isn't it? It's not bad.
You talked about Celtic going away pre-season. They're going somewhere to do some commando training, I think, with that one on.
Yeah.
It's quite an interesting one.
Yeah, we've also got this is for the actual home kit, the socks. I don't know if you've seen this. So these are official socks. And then what's happened is the people at footyheadlines.com, this kit specialists, have then made this impression based on the design of the socks.
Yeah, I was about to say if the if the stripes are grey on the sock, then it's going to be the grey on the top, which I'm not. I'm not sure if I'm a big fan of that. And
Yeah,
even the black
nah.
Adidas emblem should be green. I'm such a
So
perfectionist though.
yeah, so obviously as it says at the bottom there, that's just a prediction, but they do say the accuracy is above 75%, so it won't look exactly like that, but it will
Mm.
probably, given that the socks are like that, it will probably be
Hmm.
similar kind of design on the hoops. So what's
Yeah.
the overall thoughts on that? I think there's been chat about a Bumblebee away kit as well, potentially.
Okay. Interesting. I think just stick with a classic. Get on the chat, lads. Let us know. I reckon just a classic one that looks like the old the Lisbon
Yeah,
one. Lisbon Lions, just with it almost looks like there's no crest. But it's quality.
yeah.
It's class.
Disappointing. Right, okay, we'll end on that note then, Scott. Thanks again for your time. I don't know when we'll catch back up
Pleasure.
with you again, whether it'll be before the end of the season or not, because we're kind of rapidly running out of weeks. But yeah, we'll catch up with you soon.